think big. And where most people think about, well, here's an opportunity, think beyond that. This was an audacious goal to roll up even 24 minor league baseball teams. And it's turned into something even bigger than I could have imagined.
Welcome to How Leaders Lead. I'm David Novak, and every week I have conversations with the very best leaders in the world to help you become the best leader that you can be. And my guest today is Pat Battle, the Executive Chairman of Diamond Baseball Holdings. DBH owns 45 of the 120 minor league baseball teams. And with baseball season kicking off this week, there's no better time to learn from my friend Pat. See, Pat has an incredible career across media, sports, and business. But what really sets him apart is his mindset. He's a firm believer that optimism isn't just a fluffy, feel-good feeling. It's a real advantage in business because he knows when you bring optimism to a negotiation or an idea or a leadership challenge, you don't really see problems, you see possibilities. Keep watching and see how to turn optimism into your competitive advantage. Here's my conversation with my good friend and soon to be yours, Pat Battle. Working in baseball, you probably spent a lot of time thinking about this, Pat. If you were in the minors, what would be your walk-up song?
I've spent no time thinking about that, but I think that it would have to be Sweet Home Alabama, Leonard Skinner, Go Back to My Roots.
No surprise there. I love it. Now, Pat, give us a snapshot of Diamond Baseball Holdings and how you're literally transforming the minor league baseball landscape, which you're doing.
Yeah, it's been probably the most fun 4 years that I've ever spent in business. My entire career has been spent in sports, which is just a dream come true. But I knew enough about minor league baseball to be dangerous, but watched what MLB was doing and Commissioner Manfred in 2019 when they decided to, really change minor league baseball, improve the facility standards. And at that time, there were 162 affiliated minor league baseball teams. They ended up cutting 42 teams out of the system, reorganizing the geography, and each of the 30 major league teams have 4 affiliates, AAA, AA, High A, Single A, so 120 in total. And Rob was getting a lot of criticism from politicians and minor league baseball owners. And, I saw an idea, called the commissioner, had a conversation, and he really liked the thesis. He liked the fact that I came from college sports. There are a lot of similarities between college sports and minor league baseball, certainly in the towns in which they reside. And so, we started small. We had an opportunity to acquire up to 24 teams, which at that time there was a rule that no one entity could own more than 4. And here we are 4 years later, and we own 41 of the 120. And we go from Portland, Maine to Vancouver, Canada, all the way down to Southern California and all the way across the southern U.S. to Spartanburg, South Carolina. And it's gone a lot further and a lot faster than what we ever anticipated. But it's just been a great ride and something that I'm very proud of and excited and passionate about. And we put together an incredible team to run the organization. And so it's been a lot of fun.
Take me back to that moment, when you were thinking about the idea where you had that aha moment where you said, hey, I really do think we can do something big here and change the game.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was in November of 2020. I remember exactly where I was when I was reading an article that was very critical of the commissioner. And so I called him that day, and he took the call, and we had a 30-minute conversation, and he was very intrigued. I didn't know if we could do this, David, but he was very encouraging. He wanted to talk to his senior team. And from there, I went back to Atlanta the next day and called Terry McGurk, who I didn't know at the time that the Braves owned 3 of their 4 minor league affiliates. And So had breakfast with Terry and really was hoping that he would talk me out of it. And he actually said, you're about to do something that I've always wanted to do, felt like there was a real opportunity here, and walked out an hour later from Goldberg's Deli at the Battery with a handshake to acquire 3 of the Braves affiliates. So then I went to the office and said, well, we better figure out how to make this happen. And so I called Egon Durbin and Greg Mondre, who I had done a lot of work with Silver Lake, and just have the ultimate respect for the two of them and for their firm, and gave them the elevator pitch on the thesis, and they were behind it, and that's really how it took off. That was all in a span of a week in late 2020 when the idea started, and we began pursuing it.
That's really cool because, Terry McGuirk, he's one of the greatest executives ever in Major League Baseball. He's done a fantastic job with the Braves, running the Braves. And then, you go to the 2 renowned Silver Lake partners, which is, Egon and Greg, both of them are fantastic. How much confidence did that give you when you had guys of that stature saying, hey, I would do this if I were you?
Yeah, well, that gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like it was a good idea. I had spent enough time around minor league baseball and had seen, some of the opportunities, whether it's building new stadiums, improving the standards, creating, just creating best practices and applying scale to the business. And so I felt like the thesis was sound, but certainly, getting confirmation and affirmation from Terry and Egon, Greg, the commissioner, and many others along the way has been very gratifying.
So you see this opportunity in minor league baseball that others didn't, and you've been around a lot of leaders yourself. What do you think separates leaders who spot big opportunities from those who miss them?
My story, David, is really about, I've just been so fortunate to be surrounded by so many great people, great leaders, and I've just, had, such an incredible number of amazing people that have been put in my path along the way. I think of, a person like Billy Payne, and, Billy is one of my heroes in life. Everybody knows Billy, for bringing the Olympics to Atlanta and for other things that he's done in golf, but he's got a big vision. He thinks big, and I've really learned from Billy how to, and I can't do it like he does, but to think big, and where most people think about, well, here's an opportunity, really think beyond that. And I think that this was an audacious, goal to roll up, even 24 minor league baseball teams, and it's turned into something even bigger than I could have imagined. But I think that, that lesson of, really thinking outside the box, thinking big, had a big impact in terms of the vision here and how it's come together over the last 4 years.
Have you always had that kind of leadership mindset, Pat, where you got the guts and the courage to transform an industry like that? I mean, to think big, the vision on that. Is this something that you had just in your DNA, or is it something that you've developed over time?
It was probably in my DNA because I think the best teacher to me was my father. And he actually transformed an industry in the collegiate licensing space. And I grew up around that. And, the thing that I learned early on, my dad, was an incredible man, David. And I think you probably met him a few times and knew about him, but he was, he became the youngest college football coach at 28 years old. At the University of Tennessee, and had 7 great years at Tennessee, left Tennessee, thought he would get back into coaching, got into business, loved business. That was really his passion. And so, he and I had a great 30-plus year run together. And then 10 years after he retired, became the athletic director at Alabama at age 71. So he was the youngest football coach in SEC history and the oldest athletic director in SEC history, and an incredible career in between. But as a businessman, he was a classic entrepreneur. He wanted to be involved in every detail of the business, whether it was accounting or technology before there was technology. And and I learned early on that I wasn't smart enough or talented enough, to be involved in that. And so, when I became president of our business, probably 35 years ago now, I knew that I had to surround myself with people that were smarter and more talented than me, which wasn't very difficult. So, I think I just saw the entrepreneurial spirit that he had, and that has carried on. And then with others, you included, who have come into my life that have just been such an inspiration to me, and that I've learned so much from. That has really carried over into an entrepreneurial spirit and thinking big, and also it's hard to think big, but also have the attention to detail. And so, all of those characteristics really come into play when you're, trying to do something like this.
And one of the things that, I really admire is it seems that you're so intentional on your strategy. And one of those strategies seems to be keeping local team leadership in place even after you make the acquisitions. Give me an example of why that's turned out to be the right call.
Yeah, no, it's a great and important question, because, I think it's fair to say that when we came in and started acquiring teams, and, we stayed under the radar throughout most of 2021. And then in December of 21 is when we announced our first 10 acquisitions, including the 3 Braves teams, the AAA Yankees, AAA Dodgers, AAA Cubs. I mean, it was a pretty massive announcement. There was a lot of, fear and unknown with, this group coming in backed by Silver Lake, a private equity firm. How are they going to operate in minor league baseball? Because minor league baseball is, it's a really important, it's part of the fabric of 120 communities around the country. And so, from my college days, I understood how important, these teams were in their local community. And we've always, just strived to do that. So, we're very proud that, over 4 years of the 41 teams that we've acquired, 38 of the GMs that we inherited at acquisition are still in place. It's just very important to have that local presence. And so, we think, from a scale perspective, there's an opportunity to take the lines of business, whether sponsorship, ticketing, food and beverage, merchandising, whatever it is, and to create scale. But the key and the trick is to make sure that locally that, everything, the Iowa Cubs in Des Moines, Iowa, that it has that local flavor. And, the Portland Sea Dogs in Portland, Maine, have that local flavor. And the GMs and the staffs on these teams are just critical to that. And you couldn't do it without them. And, the other thing that I would say is I always admired, being in sports, if you look at pro leagues, if you look at, big college athletic programs, I'm certainly not saying that it's easy to operate, but in minor league baseball, nothing is given to you. There aren't a lot of incoming calls. If you look at the employees in minor league baseball, they may wear 5 different hats. They may be selling tickets during the day and pulling tarp or, behind the counter or whatever at night. And, the spirit across minor league baseball and the employees that make it up is just amazing, and it's energizing and it's inspiring to me.
It's got to be a lot of fun. And, with these 41 teams, you have scale. Do you do anything to get the 41 management teams together or to learn from each other? Or how do you share best practices?
Yeah, that's exactly the, that's the thesis. And we do that every week. We have a call with all of the GMs once a week where we come together and, talk about opportunities. And we'll have 2 or 3 clubs every week talk about things that they've done that have worked. And, the way to make this company work, the way to make DBH work is to take the best practices and to apply those across the system. And, that's what we're trying to do.
That's great. And one of the things that I've heard you say in our conversations is that you really like this gold standard mindset. And so tell us a story of how you set that tone from the top. I mean, do you have an example of where you've been able to do that?
I will tell you a story that resonates. When we sold our collegiate business to IMG back in 2007, I met a guy named Ian Todd, and Ian has just become a very close friend. He's from Britain, and Ian has had one of the most incredible sports careers in the world. And Ian started working for Mark McCormick at IMG at an early age, rose up through the ranks and became president of IMG Global, and then was hired away by Phil Knight. And Ian and his family moved from London to Portland, Oregon, and he ran Nike Global Sports Marketing. And then when Teddy Forsman acquired IMG after Mark McCormick had passed away, Teddy hired Ian back to IMG to run everything outside the U.S. And so Ian and I became great friends in 2008, 9, and 10, and remained great friends today. And I was asking him, I said, you've had three of the most amazing bosses in the world, and Mark McCormick, Phil Knight, and Teddy Forsman. What makes them tick? How would you describe the difference in those three? And he said, it's very easy. He said, both Mr. McCormick and Mr. Knight are entrepreneurs. They started their company. They built it from scratch, where, Teddy Forsman was a classic venture capitalist. And, for Forsman, everything was about the destination. He didn't care about anything except getting to the end, building a successful company and getting to the exit, where Mr. McCormick and Mr. Knight were all about the journey. They really didn't care about the destination. It was all about how do we operate along the way, celebrate the wins along the way. And, that has really resonated with me. And so, I think that we try to paint the vision to our team of what we want to accomplish and, what we think the end game, might ultimately be in minor league baseball and how we can transform these communities. But we never want to forget to celebrate the wins along the way, and that this is a journey and not a destination. And, so I think that, when you think about the gold standard, to me, it's, how do we keep that drive and keep moving, but celebrate the wins as we go along.
You talked about the power of teamwork a few times already. And do you do anything, unique as it relates to building your team and making sure that it gels and stays in sync?
We try to. I think that, throughout my career, to me, and growing up in sports and, college football is, probably my passion. And, you see how good teams operate and you see how bad teams fail. And so I think that, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and you have to have everybody pulling in the same direction. And so, we certainly give a lot of thought to, how can we do that? And I think it comes with communication, it comes with trust, it comes with, painting a vision. And then ultimately it comes with, having the right people on your team and turning them loose to do their job. But to do the job, they need to understand the goal and the vision and what you're trying to accomplish. But at the end of the day, once you share that vision, it's, how can we, really work together as a unified unit and make this thing work.
Hi, everyone. It's Kula from How Leaders Lead. And if you're seeing my face right now, it means you're watching this interview on YouTube. I want to say thanks. Thanks for watching it on YouTube. And if you love the show, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. And if you like one of the episodes, let us know in the comments. I want to just give a shout out to a couple folks who have left some positive reviews. This guy says, you are a great podcaster. David, shout out David. You are a great podcaster. Someone else said, earn to subscribe to the channel. I listened from start to end. You guys, these conversations are incredible, as you know. And if you love them, hit subscribe on our channel, leave a comment if you love one of the episodes. It'll help us in our mission to make the world a better place by developing better leaders. And, we truly believe that better workplaces, better communities, and a better world starts with better leaders. And when you help this podcast grow, it helps us do more of that. So subscribe to the channel. Let us know if you love one of the shows, and we might even feature you in one of the episodes. So subscribe to the channel today, and thank you so much for listening.
I'd like to dig a little deeper on how you make decisions, Pat. When you're looking at a sports property, whether it's a minor league team, a media business, or a licensing deal, what's the most important factors for you to consider before you make a move?
We've been agnostic in terms of geography in terms of the size of the stadium, in terms of the revenues of the team. We just believe that if you're one of 120 affiliated minor league baseball teams, that there's an opportunity to make that work. So, it's really about what you do with it once you acquire it and once you own it, and how can you, fit it into your system and hopefully, motivate the teams at each level to build a success. And so, that's really what we're trying to do is to make that work.
You're constantly, when you make these acquisitions, you got to be in negotiations. I mean, and when you go into a negotiation, how do you get ready for it, and what do you think is the key to the success?
We've acquired 41 teams, and we've had 41 different unique negotiations. Every negotiation is different, and I think that preparation is probably the single most important thing, and understand who you're negotiating with, understand who owns the team, and what brought them to that point. In this, though, it's been really interesting because other than the MLB teams who own their minor league affiliates, which is only about 20% of the 120, the vast majority of minor league baseball teams are owned by local business people in these communities that really care about their community. They care about their staff. Obviously, they're business people and want to create a profit and generate money. But in most of the negotiations that we've had, it's really about they want to hear about, okay, we want you to be loyal and to stay in our community. We want you to be loyal and to keep our staff in place. And then let's come up with a fair price. It's not the other way around. I've been in negotiations where it's all about the price. And, if that's the, it gets to be more difficult when it's about that. But, we can make owners very comfortable that we care about the community. We want to be in the community. We love, as I said earlier, we just love the ingenuity and the spirit of employees in minor league baseball. And so that's an easy one to answer. Then you can, come to a fair agreement on the price and move on. So, but I love that part of the job, and that's something that that I've essentially been involved in all of the negotiations, and just think that's a very important part, because at the end of the day, in any negotiation, to me, it's important to have that everybody wins. If you come out of a negotiation and only one side wins, it hasn't been successful.
Pat, I've talked to you a little bit about what you're doing, and it's very exciting. But you're not just investing in the team; you're also looking at greater potential within the community in terms of how to leverage your investment. How do you think about expanding the business beyond just baseball? And I'd like you to use Louisville as an example. I mean, you just came in to my hometown. You now have the minor league team. When you look at Louisville and that community, where do you see the real business opportunity? And especially as you think about it beyond just the baseball team.
Louisville is a great example, and we are extremely excited to be in Louisville. And just to talk about that one for a second, when we were at the press conference announcing the acquisition of the AAA Reds, the Louisville Bats, this was probably October of 23, I think, probably 18 months ago. Mayor Greenberg was at the press conference and pulled us aside and said, we have been waiting on DBH to acquire the Bats. We couldn't be more excited. We want to be great partners with you and help you in any way that we can. He said, it just so happens that the city owns 6 acres of land adjacent to your stadium, which we found out later was used as a surface parking lot in the right field and outfield. And so 18 months later, we've now announced a major mixed-use development, really taking a page out of what Terry McGurk and Derek Schiller did with the Braves with the Battery, to create a mixed-use development in Louisville. Because one of Mayor Greenberg's huge objectives was to really bring people back into downtown Louisville and to re-energize that part of the city. And so we will break ground this year on a $250 million mixed-use development with a hotel, condominiums, entertainment space, and retail to create more restaurants and just to create reasons for people to come, for citizens of Louisville to come downtown and to come to that area of the ballpark. Because, what we find in a lot of these communities, David, is that, these ballparks are the centers of energy in these communities. And so the more that we can do to build that up and to create that energy, it's good for everybody. And so, that's one example in Louisville. As answer to your question, but also, the Louisville Bats play 75 home games a year. So it's basically 20% of the calendar. And part of our thesis that we're starting to roll out is how do we light these stadiums the other 80% of the days when there aren't minor league baseball games. And so whether it's with concerts or Savannah Bananas games, we had a great Savannah Bananas event last summer in Louisville, sold out 3 straight nights, pretty amazing phenomenon. But it's concerts and Bananas games and high school baseball games and conference tournaments and, potentially down the road, soccer and other sports that can fill out the calendar in these communities. And so it's a big part of the thesis. It's probably the phase 2 part of the thesis. Phase 1 was really to roll up the teams and aggregate and to make sure that we're running and operating a good business. But phase 2 is how do we, bring more live sport and entertainment events into these communities that can be very impactful.
Yeah, leveraging that asset. You got a great asset there. How do you use it more frequently? Makes a ton of sense. And you bring up Jesse Cole, who has been on one of my podcasts, and I've read his books, and he's a heck of an entrepreneur. And a great marketing person. And you're obviously a tremendous learner. You've talked about learning from the Braves and how you applied that to Louisville. What have you learned about entertainment and marketing just working with Jesse Cole and the Savannah Bananas group?
Jesse he's amazing. And I guess it was probably 2 or 3 years ago when I reached out, just cold called Jesse. Didn't know a lot about him, but had, heard about the Bananas. And he was starting to make some noise on a national level with the 60 Minutes and some other, news organizations that covered what they were doing. And we had a great conversation. And, Jesse shared with me that, his hero in life is P.T. Barnum. So it's all about, entertainment. He was a minor league baseball player, great athlete. Baseball was his passion. And he just felt that baseball had become too corporate. And, what's interesting, I met with Jesse again with a couple of his team members and Peter Freund, who's our CEO of DBH. We met with Jesse last April, with the show that they put on starting 2 hours before the game, the 2 hours of the game, and then 2 hours after the game. They curate every minute of that show, and it's all about the fans. It is all about making sure that it's fan-friendly. And he said after every game, our team gets together and we go through and talk about what was successful, where we failed. And he said, we want to take all fan friction out of the system and everything focused on that. And that has, it's easy to say that. It's not easy to do that, but he's done it. And, we've certainly taken several pages out of Jesse's book and trying to do that. And in fact, we just had a town hall last week with our 1,300 employees. And, one of the things that Peter and I said to our DBH team is, look, we know that, operating, being at the stadium 70, 75 nights a year, it can get monotonous. But, just remember we're in the business of making memories. And for the fans that attend these games, it's all about how do we make memories. And I use the example that somebody had actually used in a different context with my daughter, who was an aspiring Broadway actress when she was young. And we just said, look, focus on 2 people every game. There's probably somebody attending that game that this is their very first baseball game. Think about them and how we help them make memories. There's also probably somebody attending that game that's attending their very last game. And so think about those 2 people every game and know that they're in the stadium, and it will make your job a lot easier and it will just keep it fresh. And how do we make memories and serve? Because if we can serve those 2 people, we're going to make memories for everybody in the park. And so, again, back to Jesse Cole and the Bananas, they've really spent their entire business philosophy doing just that.
That's I've never heard anybody talk about the customer that way. The first, the first experience and the last experience. That's really great. I mean, how do you come up with things like that, Pat?
Yeah, well, as I said, this was my daughter Mary Raines, who is an amazing singer, and at one time in her life wanted to be on Broadway. Her voice teacher, she talked about, we're doing 20 shows. And how do you stay fresh and keep it fresh? And it was actually her voice teacher that said, just imagine that in the audience tonight is somebody seeing their very first show and somebody seeing their very last show, and focus on those two people. And that's always resonated with me. And I think it's a great lesson in life.
It really is, and it's also a great example of pattern thinking, where it's what you're taking something from one industry and say, okay, how do we take it over here? I want to shift gears, Pat, and you did talk about the huge impact that your father had on you in your life, but tell us a story from your childhood that shaped the kind of leader you are today.
Well, I don't know about shape the kind of leader, but I was just very blessed with amazing parents. My mom and dad, who have both passed away. My dad, November of just this past year, just recently. And, I think probably if I had to recall one story, I mentioned earlier that he was the football coach at Tennessee, had a super successful career, went to bowl games in 6 of the 7 seasons. And I think best year, probably second in the country. But he was, he played for Bear Bryant in Alabama. He was always a little bit of an outsider at the University of Tennessee because of that rivalry. And in 1976, which was his last season, Johnny Majors, who was a favorite son of Tennessee, was winning a national championship at the University of Pittsburgh. And so Tennessee fans were restless and really wanted Johnny Majors to come home. And so, Dad ended up resigning from Tennessee, took a year off. And I'll never forget that the morning that he had made the decision to resign, he and my mom came up to my room. I was in the 8th grade, and I was in bed, and they woke me up, and they said, "Hey, we just want to let you know that, the last couple of weeks have been kind of rough, and we've been thinking about this, and so I'm going to resign today." And he said, "Look, I know this is sad, but," he said, I just want you to know, and this is the way that I think, and this is the way that I want you to think. If you believe in yourself, if you believe in God, if you believe in what you're doing, everything is it happens for a reason, and everything will turn out okay." And, that has just always stuck with me, that, in one of the darkest days that he probably ever had, that was his attitude. And, it was believe in yourself, believe in God, believe in what you're doing, and, just plow through, and everything will work out. And that has certainly resonated with me. And I hope that, that's in part how I've lived my life. And in his case, it was such a blessing in disguise. I mean, we loved the time in Knoxville. It was an amazing, start to his career. But it was really just the first chapter of many chapters that he was able to write. And I always look back on that day. And if he had not had that attitude, what would have happened versus having that? And I think that, if I was describing, one of my traits that people tell me, they say, "You're such an optimist," and I am. I'm just, I see the glass half full, and I try to be optimistic in all things. And it probably, thinking about it, and thank you for taking me back to that memory, but it probably goes back to that time in the 8th grade when I had that conversation with my mom and dad.
That's a great story, and you started your career in 1984 working alongside your father at Collegiate Licensing Company, and you were part of basically building an industry from the ground up. Tell us a little bit about that business.
Yeah, it's very similar, ironically, to what we're doing in minor league baseball. It really started with one university, the University of Alabama, and Dad obviously had a great relationship with Bear Bryant, who was his coach at Alabama, and my dad would have said that Coach Bryant, was probably, other than his father, the most influential person that he ever was around. So Coach Bryant really had the idea, and Dad started to represent Coach Bryant, and anybody that wanted to use Coach Bryant's name and likeness wanted to use the University of Alabama trademarks. And at that time, there really were no universities who had registered their marks and were taking advantage of it. And so when he started the business in 1981, representing just the University of Alabama, retail market for collegiate merchandise was estimated at probably $100 million, with the vast majority of sales taking place through the bookstore, through stadium concessions. And, he had a vision, but it wasn't as big a vision as, what it turned out to be. But he felt like there was an opportunity and, just signed one university at a time, kind of shared the vision with them. They bought into it. And today, we sold the company in 2007, but I'm very proud to say that CLC is still thriving. It's an amazing business. Probably half of the employees that we had in 2007 when we sold are still there today. And it's, which is very gratifying. And to compare where it was when Dad started the company, it's a $100 million business with 80% of the sales taking place on campus. Today, it's about a $5 billion retail business with less than 10% of the sales taking place on college campuses. So, it turned out to be a lot bigger, but hopefully we had a hand in making that happen.
Yeah, you certainly did. And your dad was CEO until you took over in 2002. And, when you take over for such a titan like that, okay, what was it like just stepping into that leadership role and then making it your own?
I recognized that I wasn't smart enough and talented enough to be involved in everything. And so, we just built a great team. And by the time that I became president and CEO, we had built out just a tremendous team across every facet of the business. And I think that was, ultimately the secret of the success. But I also think, David, that, and this is something that, Dad just believed, it was part of his DNA. He practiced what he preached in terms of a customer service philosophy, customer first. And, he said, look, if we're in this for us to win, we're never going to win. We have to make this about our customer. And if the universities that we represent, if they're the winners, then, we're going to be okay. That's something that really carried through, and hopefully everything that I've done is really thinking about who is the customer, how do we make them successful, and if they're successful, then everybody else will win. And it was just an honor. I don't know that I really thought about being handed over the reins. I'd been involved in the business for 10 years. It just sort of evolved into becoming president and CEO, and by that time, I had already had a pretty significant hand in putting together the team that would lead us, for the next 10 years until we sold. And part of that leadership group, as I said, is still in place today, which is very gratifying to me.
When you were coming up in that business, was there a moment, a sort of a seminal moment that stands out to you, where you said, hey, man, I really want to be the leader. I want to be the guy.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just, as I said, it really just evolved, and we were in business together, and we built the business together, and it was just, to have your father, as your, closest friend, and, being with him every day and as your mentor, it was just a great experience. And, looking back on it, I think I probably learned a lot more than I thought at the time. When you think about those lessons and how you applied them, but I think that the seminal moment for us was probably, around 1995, 96. We were 10 or 15 years in the business. We probably at that time represented, 70 or 80 schools. There were, I think it was 1995 was the year that we signed Notre Dame, Texas, and Florida who were three at that time, very independent thinking universities and athletic departments. And we were able to, I think, when we were able to get the three of them to see that this is best for us, this is a great company, we want to be associated with this company. That was really the seminal moment in our business in terms of when we achieved scale and when we were on a path to really make this thing work.
Yeah, walk me through the decision, because you built this incredible business. This is your baby, it's your family business. What made you decide to sell it to IMG Sports and Entertainment? What was it that said, hey, it's time?
Teddy Forsman was very persuasive. Teddy had a guy named George Pine. So I mentioned Ian Todd earlier, who was running everything outside the U.S. He brought George Pine in to run the U.S. business. This was right around 2006, 2007. And George called, and I knew George from when he was at NASCAR, and he said, hey, I just want to come down and see you. And, we got new ownership at IMG. And, I knew what George probably wanted, and we had no interest in selling the business. But George came in and said, look, very interested in college. Teddy's come in. As we look at the IMG business today, 75% of the business is outside the U.S. Only 25% is in the U.S. And, Mr. Forsman, is very keen on trying to grow the U.S. business. IMG doesn't play in college, and this is an area that we would like to look at. And so, I spent my time, basically telling George why IMG didn't want to come into the college business, and that we had, over 150 universities, and we had 10-year contracts. And, if they wanted to come in and compete, it was going to take a long time to do it. And he said, look, we don't want to compete, but, we think that CLC can be the catalyst for a bigger vision around not only licensing, but multimedia rights and other things. And he got me to agree to go to New York, and George and I had a dinner with Teddy Forsman, and he was a great salesman. And we decided that, this was the time to do it, and that, that we could do it in a way that would protect our staff, but also, provide great opportunities to grow and expand beyond what we could do as a company. When you plug into the resources of an IMG, it's pretty incredible. And it was, through that experience, I stayed there for 3.5 years as part of the acquisition, but I met people like Ian Todd and Mark Steinberg and Andy Pierce and Tom Worcester and, so many people that were there during that time that really influenced. And I think, as we're talking about this, one of the things that, that I learned from that is, I spent 30 years in college sports and didn't really understand or know or have confidence that, that I really knew anything outside of college sports. And so when you go in, what you realize is that business is business is business, whatever it is, whether it's a, lighting company. I'm on the board of Acuity Brands, knew nothing about lighting. But business is business, and the same principles apply. And, treating your customers right and having a vision and building a great team. And, those are sound principles that apply across industries and across business. And so that was a great lesson for me to learn. And one of the great takeaways that I had from the time at IMG is really learning that there's a much bigger world out there, and that the same principles apply.
We'll be back with the rest of my conversation with Pat Battle in just a moment. If you want to go all in on baseball this week, check out my conversation with Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball. I really love how he talks about finding common ground in leadership and why it's key if you want to build momentum.
I am old school, I think, in terms of negotiations. I really believe that the kind of theory that underlies the National Labor Relations Act is correct. And that theory is essentially, you have an obligation to go in a room and exchange views in a robust way and try in good faith to find common ground. And I really do believe that exchange of views in the room is crucial to moving people towards the center, towards an agreement. I'm a huge believer in momentum in the process, that people being engaged, involved in the process on a consistent basis creates a momentum towards agreement that's really, really vital.
Go back and listen to my entire conversation with Rob, episode 91, here on How Leaders Lead. You know, Pat, you're known for making big bets, you know, on businesses and you know, being someone that really, you know, does your homework and you're right more times than you're wrong, obviously. But has there ever been a time where you were really wrong and how did you pivot?
Yeah, I'm wrong every day in some way. I remember one that this is kind of a crazy story that I haven't thought about in 25 years. But
sorry to make you do it.
when we were in the middle of building CLC, somebody approached me about handling taking over the licensing for fraternities and sororities, and so I got for a few days got excited about that, and we went and met with some of the heads of the national chapters of the fraternities and sororities, and they were all fired up about it. We felt like that we could take the business that we had and plug into it. And I went to a meeting where we were speaking with, I don't know, there were 100 people in the room, and 99 of the people were, I mean, just really upset that we were coming into this business, felt like there was no room that, you know, all we're going to do is raise the price on the customers of, you know, people that are buying, the members of the fraternity and sorority. And so we shut that down pretty quickly and pivoted. So that's not a great answer to your question.
No, but it's well, you have the idea and you're smart enough to back off.
and probably the biggest lesson from that is we didn't do enough research going in. And I really do think that preparation can solve a lot of problems. If you come in, whether you're preparing for an interview or preparing to buy a company or preparing to make a big pitch and sales presentation, you know, really knowing who your audience is very important, and understanding to the best of your ability what their goals and objectives are. You know, that allows you to be successful. And if you're not prepared, you're probably not going to be successful.
So let's go back to your baseball business now. And I know you're really excited about the growth opportunities. In fact, you've said that your company is only in its fourth inning of growth. I think that's one of your quotes here. What do you see as the biggest opportunity ahead? Is it more of the roll-ups, or is it leveraging the assets you already have?
Yeah, I think it's three things. The real estate piece is a big opportunity. And, you know, Louisville will be our first project, and we're very proud of that. But we are in, pretty significant conversations. And, you know, interestingly to me, and it's exciting, you know, it's not just the mayors of these towns, it's the governors of these states that are very invested in, you know, how can we attract, business development in these communities. You know, we're seeing it in so many places. So I think the real estate is something that we will become more focused on. You know, it just so happens that, you know, that could become a great standalone business, but it also creates more energy around the stadium and should be very good for the teams that we own, because it just brings more fans to the ballpark. Yeah, we want to continue to roll up, and, you know, we're at 41 teams now. Hopefully, you know, we'll have an announcement next week, which will be a really big announcement, which will take us to 42. And, you know, we should announce 3 more in the next couple of weeks. So we should be at 45 teams by the start of the season. And, you know, we haven't even begun. We really are in the fourth inning in terms of how do we scale the ticketing and the food and beverage and the merchandising and the sponsorship. And so we think there's a lot of runway there. And then you asked the question about kind of the third opportunity, which is how do we light these stadiums up, you know, for the 80% of the days when they're dark. And, you know, the concerts and the other events that we can bring into the stadium is another great opportunity. All of those are great business opportunities, but they're also really impactful for these communities. You know, these aren't the 30 major markets. You know, Louisville's one of the larger markets for minor league baseball, and you have Charlotte and Las Vegas and a few, but it's Des Moines and Scranton and Portland and Columbus, Georgia, and Spartanburg, South Carolina, and Knoxville, Tennessee, and, you know, those are the places where all of this really happens. And so, you know, one of the gratifying things to me, and I remember early on when I was talking to Greg Mondre, at Silver Lake about the business, he said, one of the things that really fired him up was thinking about the impact that we're going to have on these communities. And that's certainly the case and something that I'm very proud of.
Well, you should be. It's great when a business always has a noble cause, and that's a great noble cause. Pat, this has been so much fun. I want to have some more with you with my lightning round of questions. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready, I think.
All right. What 3 words best describe you?
Well, I think that I'm quietly competitive. I'm optimistic. I want integrity to be a word that when people think about me, they would think integrity.
If you could be one person for a day beside yourself, who would it be?
Well, I've always wanted to be the number 1 golfer in the world, so Scotty Scheffler.
Your biggest pet peeve?
People that think glass half empty.
Who would play you in a movie?
My family says that Dennis Quaid would be the actor that would play me.
What's the best mascot in the minor leagues?
Oh, that's a tough question. I love Slugger. Slugger is he's the Portland Sea Dogs, which is the AA Red Sox mascot. So Slugger's my favorite mascot.
They say dogs take after their owners, Pat. So what's one way you and your dog are alike?
My dog's name is Tipsy. So if that tells you anything, Tipsy and I really don't have anything in common. Tipsy is Alice Ann's dog, but I guess if the one way that we would be alike is that we both love Alice Ann.
Where'd your nickname Patches come from?
Oh, how'd you know about Patches? Oh my gosh. Patches it's funny. That's my grandfather's name. So, but Patches actually came from, this gets back to the competitive part of me. I was playing golf with son Will and one of his friends when they were 12. And Will said that every time I would miss a shot, I would say, Patrick. And he thought I was saying Patches. And so they started calling me Patches. And so for all of my kids, for Will, Mary Rains, and Annie, who's our youngest, they started calling me Patches. But, it's amazing thinking about, somebody said to me one time, and every time Allie, my granddaughter, calls me Patches, I think of this. Somebody, I thought this was a great saying. They said that your kids are your investment and your grandkids are your dividend. And and Allie and Paul they are definitely the dividends.
What's one thing that you do just for you?
Other than go to Starbucks every morning, my 2 passions are I love to golf and I love to fly fish. And fly fishing is something that I do just for me. I love to get out whenever I can. I don't do it often enough, but I do love to fly fish.
Since you brought up Starbucks, what's your go-to Starbucks order?
Oh, I hate to say this publicly, but it's a venti vanilla latte.
That's mine too. What's your most prized possession?
Prized possession. I would say since we've been talking a lot about baseball, something that I never thought that I would get is we bought two affiliates from the Texas Rangers. And last year, the Rangers won the World Series, and they presented Peter Freund, our CEO, and me with a World Series ring. So I have a Texas Rangers World Series ring sitting just to my right here, which is very special.
If I turned on the radio in your car, what would I hear?
Well, if you turn it on today, you would hear Brett Young, because I played golf with Brett earlier and I'm going to his concert tonight. I have a very broad music repertoire. I go from Broadway to country to 70s to rock. I love Drew and Ellie Holcomb are 2 of my favorites. I know you know them very well. And then Eagles would be the other. But today it's Brett Young.
What's one of your daily rituals, something that you never miss?
Take an hour to just read, whatever it is. I love to do that in the quiet of the morning. It's usually between 6 and 7 every morning, and it's a great way to start the day.
Absolutely. And we're out of the lightning round, and I just got a couple more questions for you here. Now you and your fantastic wife, Alice Ann, you have 3 kids. What's a leadership lesson from home that's influenced the way you lead in business?
Alice Ann is, we will celebrate our 39th anniversary in June of this year, which is amazing. And, she is my partner, best friend, and biggest cheerleader. And, I've just learned so much about, life from her. I don't know that I can give you a specific, David, but, I learn from the kids every day, just watching them. I mean, everything to me is about watching them grow and be happy and be successful. And I'm just so proud of all three of them. And, when all else fails, a good friend of both of ours, Craig Heatley, always talked about, it's about family, friends, and experiences at the end of the day. And, I think the thing that Alice Ann and the kids and the grandkids have taught me is that's really all that matters. At the end of the day, it just keeps it in perspective. It keeps you humble. And, everything that we do for business and everything else, at the end of the day, it's really about your family and friends, and it just helps to keep it in perspective.
Last question here, Pat. What's one piece of advice you'd give to anyone who wants to be a better leader?
We've talked about a lot. One thing that I haven't mentioned that I think is just so important, I think it's just a thirst to learn. I think about people like, George Roberts and Sam Reeves and others that, have been great mentors to me. Those guys have it all. And yet when you're around them, all they do is ask questions, and they just want to learn in every situation. And I think that, I would say curiosity and optimism. Always think of the glass as half full.
Well, Pat, you walk the talk on all this, and congratulations on, building such great businesses that you've built. And I know the best is ahead for you. What's your unfinished business? You have any?
I don't know that I have any unfinished business. Life right now is just so, it's just great. I mean, the family's great. Really enjoy. I mean, the thing about this business at DBH that I've really enjoyed is doing business with friends. And, I think when you can combine that, if you can get to the point where, friends and business and you're working together and trying to accomplish, those goals together, I think that is, it's a great thing. And I feel very fortunate to be in that case right now. So I don't know about unfinished business, but I just want to keep going, stay motivated, never rest on your laurels, and just keep it going.
Well, Pat, I want to thank you, and I also want to thank Alice Ann for your friendship. You guys both mean a lot to me, and it means a lot to me that you take the time to come on this show. I appreciate you, man. Well, it's easy to see why I cherish Pat as a friend. No matter the challenge, he works through it with humility, optimism, and a belief that there's always a way forward. Now, don't get me wrong. Great leaders have to deal in reality and stay grounded with the facts, but they also have to understand the optimism that's required to expand ideas, to create win-win deals, and to help you spot opportunities that, frankly, others miss. When you have that kind of optimistic mindset, you'll see possibilities where others see roadblocks. And I'm telling you, that's a serious competitive advantage. So how can you put this idea into action this week? Well, take a big idea or challenge you're facing and write down all the reasons why it won't work. Then flip the script. List all the reasons that it will work. Train your mind to look for those possibilities, and guess what? You'll be way more likely to find them. So do you want to know how leaders lead? What we learned today is that great leaders know that optimism is a competitive advantage. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of How Leaders Lead, where every Thursday you get to listen in while I interview some of the very best leaders in the world. I make it a point to give you something simple on each and every episode that you can apply to your business so that you'll become the best leader that you can be.